I just want to thank you all for joining us because I know, you all have things that you're taking care of and a lot of destinations that you're keeping track of at the moment. So thank you for taking a bit of time and joining us for an overview of Uzbekistan. And, I don't know if some of you have been there before or you're sending clients, but it's definitely a country that's a rising star in travel. So it kind of used to be at the tail end of people's bucket lists, but we're seeing more and more people looking to do this as kind of an adventure that they are specifically interested in. And especially in Central Asia, it's probably the most popular country to visit. So why Uzbekistan? So it's got really exciting history. It's got very ancient history. It was along the Silk and Spice route, so it's got kind of that history for people who are interested in that. It's obviously got some Soviet history, early Islam, so it just kind of has a mix of all of these different things. There was Zoroastrianism, so just really a very interesting mix of history here. That history leads to like amazing architecture, and the people here are very wonderful. This is still a part of the world where tourists are very much appreciated and treated with like guest culture, very welcoming. And like I said, this is for some people at the tail end of their I've been everywhere else, where do I go now? So this is kind of that destination that's often at the end of people's bucket list. So it's a great option for your clients who've been everywhere else in the world. And it kind of has that exotic feel while still being a very safe place. One thing I do like to say, with every destination, there's the great parts, but there's also the parts that you want to be, upfront and honest about. And with Uzbekistan and just Central Asia in general, it is a little bit about managing expectations, specifically with things like hotels, roads, food, and money. So tourism is still developing here. It is getting better, and the country is very committed. The government itself is committed to really improving the infrastructure around tourism. So they're right now working on additional railways and creating really modern road structures to get to places that are kind of not one of the big four cities for visiting. They're working on kind of subsidizing new hotels that are of a higher standard in different places. So it really is a country that's developing great tourism, which also means that it's still kind of one of those places. Right now, mostly everything they're getting is group tours. Very few people are doing this as an FIT. So this is kind of one of those destinations that with that kind of infrastructure being put in by the government, we expect to see get a little more popular. So it's definitely one of those ones that it does have guests coming, but if you have guests who kind of want to see it before it hits the big time, becomes the next Istanbul, this is a good time. So with that, I just like to go through kind of like the not as nice side. So here hotels are still in development. So hotels are not going to be on the same standard as other Exeter destinations for hotels. So you're looking at more like 3-star hotels. We are always choosing the best of the hotels that are available there. They're going to have great local feel. They'll be clean and comfortable, but they're certainly not going to be a luxury product. So that's, first and foremost, kind of like an expectation management. And then the food here, which is very tasty, but most Americans will kind of tire of it because it is heavier. So it's going to be a little oilier, lots of meats, denser meals. This is a part of the world where they're still eating the same kind of food that they ate when they were fully agricultural, going out to work in the fields 15 hours a day. So they're calorie dense, heavy meals, which obviously a lot of Americans aren't accustomed to. So we do suggest bringing snacks like granola bars or things like that. You can go to the markets and pick up things like really great like nuts and dried fruits and things like that as well. So you can kind of have that local flair, but most Americans are not going to find the food layout here to be exciting past the first couple days. Additionally, it is one of the places in the world where a lot of Americans will experience traveler's stomach. So, bottled water, and we always recommend bringing some medicines from home, some Pepto-Bismol or whatever. It's not to scare anyone away from it. I went to Uzbekistan. I loved a lot of the food, but it did get heavy even for me. So I just like to go through kind of like the not always as great parts before we move into, you know, the amazing parts. So just to kind of show you where it is on a map, sorry, skipped ahead on me. So it is part of kind of the 5 countries that make up Central Asia: Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. So it is kind of in this part of the world. And to get here, if you've never had to fly anyone out here, most of our clients are connecting through Istanbul on Turkish Airlines. That's the #1 way that people are getting to this region. Alternatively, you can also travel via Emirates and Dubai. And there are connections through Moscow on Aeroflot, but I know that's not a favorite for a lot of business and first class travelers. So I'm just going to start kicking it off with the capital and the first city that most people are going to visit, which is Tashkent. This is where almost all of the international flights are going to come into. We generally recommend about 2 full days in Tashkent. That will get you to see the main sites and experience kind of the history here. And it's a great starting point for understanding Uzbekistan's history and culture. And again, the Tashkent airport is served internationally by Lufthansa, Turkish Airlines, and Aeroflot. So places that we typically, you know, highlights for visiting here, the Applied Arts Museum, which displays various types of national handicrafts like carpets, jewelry, wood carvings, gold embroidery. So that's a really great one. We also recommend visiting the workshops of a famed Uzbek ceramicist. He comes from a dynasty of ceramic artists, and his workshops are really, they're in this like gorgeous kind of caravanserai building with gardens, and they really give you a good insight into the ceramic arts in Uzbekistan. We can also arrange master classes in ceramics here, so people can kind of try their hand and, you know, have something to take home. Tashkent's Old Town is mainly centered on the historic Torsu Bazaar, which is kind of surrounded by a maze of, you know, narrow lanes with mosques and houses and small stores, so very picturesque. It's really the perfect place to get an idea of what traditional Uzbek life is like. And as you can see, like really delicious looking foods, those fresh breads that they bake and bring to you warm are just fabulous. And handicrafts here in Uzbekistan kind of reign supreme. So I would encourage any guests that you have going to leave room in their suitcase or bring an extra suitcase, because they will certainly be tempted by a number of beautiful items, from scarves and purses to dresses and, you know, ceramics. So it's really a place where these traditional handicrafts are still happening. And so you get these really traditional and authentic pieces that bring you back to your travels. Actually, I'll show it afterwards when I close it, but I have a piece up here that's made from old carpets that can't be fixed as whole. So it's an artisan who kind of breaks them down and creates carpet bags out of them. Here is actually in Tashkent is going to be the best hotel the whole country really has to offer, which is the Hyatt Regency. It's a modern property. It's not that old. It's only a few years old. It's situated very close to the city center, and it's the only 5-star property in the city, and really kind of only the true 5-star that's level of the country. From here, most people are going to go to Khiva. So there are daily flights, and you actually fly to Urgench, which is here. So you fly from Tashkent here, and then you just take an hour and a half cab ride back, transfer to Khiva here. And that's kind of where you're going to go to explore the historic town of Khiva. That flight's about an hour and a half long. It's traditionally offered daily, so it's really easy to get there. Khiva is this very picturesque town as far as, you know, this part of the world goes. Its history goes back to the 6th century. And the inner town is a UNESCO protected site. It has over 300 historic monuments. most of the buildings dating from the 18th and 19th century. And you really need at least a full day to explore Kiva's historic and religious sites. And you can kind of see it's got these beautiful old town walls that are built around it. So it really is like the city itself is a site. Here, one of our favorite things to do is a carpet workshop. There's quite a few here. Traditional carpets, you can purchase them here, but I think the best part is you can see local ladies weaving carpets in traditional style looms. So it's really interesting to watch, and it actually gives a great appreciation for kind of why the carpets cost what they do, because you see how they are still made by hand. There's also a UNESCO silk workshop here. So UNESCO sponsors it, and it's a traditional silk workshop, and we can arrange a visit. And so this is, again, where you're seeing like the traditional dyes, how those dyes are created for the silk, how the traditional means of making the carpets is. It's really interesting. Doesn't take very long, so it's a great experience. And I'd just like to show a few more pictures, just kind of give you an idea of, you know, how, like I said, very cute and just stunning the city is as a whole. The whole city feels like a bit like a museum. So for hotels here, there are several great options. In the smaller cities of Uzbekistan, like Khiva, hotel accommodations are completely subject to availability. And that is to say that sometimes a group will book them out. So it's really hard ahead of time to say which hotel we'll be able to get. We have several that we like. So here in Khiva, there's the Air Orient Star, the Beck Hotel, the Malika Kivak, which is here on the screen. So, and this is also kind of to give you an idea of what the hotels here will look like. Again, they're not going to blow anyone away. They have, you know, dated decor, but they are clean, comfortable. The staff is always very helpful. And they're always going to be located centrally so that guests can walk out right to, you know, right to the sites that they're going to that day. Most people follow a pretty traditional itinerary when they go to Uzbekistan because there's kind of set cities that they're looking to go to. There are a couple kind of add-ons that people occasionally opt for. One of those is Nukus, which is where the Igor Savitsky Museum is. The main draw here is the museum, so that's why people would go here. And that the museum houses a collection of thousands of avant-garde Russian art pieces that were banned during the Soviet period, and Igor Savitsky collected them. People typically ask because it's received a lot of press in like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and it actually was the subject of an award-winning documentary called Desert of Forbidden Art. So it has kind of received some recognition here in the US, so people do sometimes ask to go to here. It can be done as an overnight between Tashkent and Khiva, or as a really long day trip from Khiva. It's approximately 3 hours by train or car from Khiva. The only reason I would ever suggest it as a day trip is just because the hotel accommodations here are basic. Not as nice as, they're not even as nice as they are in Khiva. So
very basic.
Yeah. But it is one of those things that, you know, I would never outwardly suggest it to someone. It's one of those things people are asking for, and then we're adding in because you're going to see this museum. And then from Khiva, we're typically moving on to Bukhara. We recommend flying from Khiva, again, via Urgent, which is just a city I struggle with every time. So again, you're coming over here, taking the airport to get to the airport, and then flying down to Bukhara. They are working at the moment on updating the train station in Khiva to accept the high-speed train. And once that's open, it will be a really great option for us. And that would be a preferred way of getting clients to Bukhara. The train that's available now is an old Soviet-style train. You know, there's no first class. You're sitting with people who might have like chickens with them, kind of thing. So not something we're putting clients on. And alternatively, there is a 300-mile drive across the Kizilkum Desert, and it's a full-day experience. We used to do this. We don't really recommend this only because the roads are not the greatest between the cities. Again, something the country's working on, and rest stops are seldom to non-existent. So, it's a long day drive, especially if they're older clients, to not be able to get out, stretch your legs, or use the restroom. Once you get to Bukhara, again, it's another really gorgeous city with this typical architecture. It was actually once one of the main centers for Persian civilization. The old town is comprised of this really impressive Poi Kalyan complex that you see on the picture. And its most impressive feature and a popular landmark is the Kalyan minaret that you see in the picture. It was built in the form of a circular 150-foot high brick tower. And actually the story goes that Genghis Khan was so impressed with it that he forbid his troops from destroying it as they were destroying the rest of the town. So it is still intact there. Other sites, the Kagan Palace, or the White Palace, which was built for Tsar Nicholas I. And it's just a really gorgeous palace kind of set outside of the town. And the Ark Fortress is just a major part of the town itself. And then here, another thing is we can arrange a PLOV masterclass. We can always do this privately, but I would like to say I've done it privately and as a part of another group. And PLOV is traditionally eaten kind of as a large group gathering meal. And so that's the most authentic way both to experience it and for it to be cooked. So, if people are not opposed to it, I actually think it's a better experience to have this as a non-private masterclass and join on to, another group or other FITs that are taking part. And then here in Bukhara, again, it's similar to Khiva as far as like the hotels are smaller, going to be more subject to availability. And our recommendations here are going to be the Minor Hotel, which you see in the pictures, as well. There's a few others like the Asia Hotel, Zargaran Plaza, Omar Khayyam. So we do have options. Again, some of these hotels only have 17 rooms. So it's really hard ahead of time, when you're making a proposal, to know exactly which hotel will have availability once clients book. From Bukhara, you typically are going to move on to Samarkand. This is where we can finally use the high-speed train. It's the best way to travel between the two cities. It has a first-class train, so you have tea, coffee service. These trains they come from Spain, so it's a very Western European style train. And the travel times do depend on the schedule because different days of the week have different departure times with different stops. But typically we try to book the one that's around 3 hours, but it does differ. So Rajasthan Square is kind of the highlight for Samarkand. There are 3 main buildings here that make up the square, and they were built between the 15th and 17th centuries. My favorite part of this is actually there's kind of like a mini bazaar, if you will, like different shops that are located here, and there's a really lovely musical instrument stall where they make and sell musical instruments, and they are happy to demonstrate how these very traditional Uzbek instruments are used and what they sound like, and kind of do like a mini, 5-minute mini concert. And it's a really unique and interesting experience. So that's my favorite part of this site. And then this is one of our other possible add-ons that not everyone does. It can either be done as a day trip from Samarkand. It's about 3 to 4 hours round trip, which is, I think, the best way to do it. It's one of Central Asia's most historic sites and cities. So it dates to more than 2,700 years ago. And it was founded by the Persian Empire. It's also more modern claim to fame, if you will, and I'm using modern very lightly here, it's also the birthplace of Amur Timur, the founder of the Timurid dynasty. So he's kind of the most famous Uzbek leader. And so that's kind of the claim to fame here. And so it's a really great add-on, again, for someone who has a little more time to see an extra city. Then we have the Shaki Zinda necropolis. It's a cluster of 11 mausoleums built between the 14th and 15th centuries. And it's great because it kind of shows the different types and periods of architecture and design for the area. And it's actually still a religious site that's very much in use today. So whereas some of the sites have become more museum monument style, this is still an actively used site. And this is actually my colleague Stella, who's the other kind of Uzbekistan specialist. She wanted me to say, this is her favorite place in Uzbekistan. And, she gets excited when she sees the pictures of it even, so.
Just quickly before you continue on, Jody, I'm sorry, how many nights do you recommend for each of the cities we've talked about so far? So Khiva, Bukhara, and then Samarkand. And that would be kind of assuming your ideal day trips as well, factoring that in.
Yeah, so for the day trips, again, the Nukus one, really, I would only ever recommend that to someone who's already interested in it. And that's because the only thing truly to see there is that one museum. So if you don't have a special interest in it, I would not say that is a worthwhile day trip. So we do have a couple samples, and I will say this, I have a slide on it later. Like two days in Tashkent, at least one full day, so 2 nights in Khiva, Bukhara, I'd say 2 days. But the big thing here is going to be the schedule for flights and trains, because we never want to do long overland drives. It's just really not comfortable for guests. It doesn't feel luxurious to do them. Sometimes it's better to add a day in a city that maybe you've already done all the highlights on, so that you can, you have an extra half day there, but it means you can take the faster train, or it means you can take the flight and not do the overland. So while I can give you ideals, I will say that Uzbekistan is one of those countries where we're kind of beholden to whatever the train and flight schedules are. So we can have perfect ideals, but that doesn't always work out. So again, two days Tashkent, 1 full day Khiva, I would say 2 for Bukhara, and at least 2 for Samarkand, 3 if you can do it. So that's what I would say.
No, I think that answers the question as well. And just to reiterate, with Uzbekistan, the biggest driver is the logistic side of this. So hotel availability, train schedules, and flights. So for guests that are coming, the more flexible that they can be, if we can shift their dates forward or back a little bit to get the better schedules, it certainly makes a big difference. And as someone who has done the drive from Bukhara to Samarkand, I certainly, if it is avoidable, would suggest avoiding it and taking the flight. It certainly would make for a much more comfortable day.
Yes, 100%. I've also done the drive. It is not fun. It's a very long drive. There are not very many things to stop and see. And again, there are not very many rest stops. So it's definitely not the most comfortable journey you're ever going to have. A 1 hour flight, much preferable. But yeah,
thank you.
Okay, so let's see, I think I clicked off. There we go. Okay, so 2 other kind of sites for Samarkand, the Happy Bird Handicraft Center. So it's a really, really great experience, and I definitely think everyone should add it on. While there are things for sale here, that's actually not the whole driver. This was created by a group of, handicraft people and some leaders in the traditional Uzbek way, and they really wanted to hold on to traditional, authentic ways of making Uzbekistan handicrafts. So they created this so you have everything from kind of creating silk paper and silk weavings, traditional like wood carvings. So they really wanted to do everything as it traditionally was, without any kind of modern machinery or subbing synthetic material. So it's really this amazing way of seeing how everything was done before any of, basically before the Soviets took over and kind of mechanized everything and did away with handicrafts. So it's a great experience. I think it's fabulous. And then there's also the Observatory of Uzbek, which is just really interesting because they didn't have an official observatory, so he basically found a way to jerry rig, for a better, lack of a better word, a way to measure the stars, and actually was very, very accurate with it. So it's also a very interesting but quick stop. Here we have a slightly higher level of hotel. So we have the Grand Samarkand Hotel, which you can see here. There's also the Dilima Luxury Premium or the Platinum Hotel. So we have a few hotels, and you can see also they are a little bit larger than they are in Bukhara and Khiva. So we're kind of, as we get closer to the more industrial part of the business centers of the country, we're getting slightly better hotels. And so this was kind of, you know, the note I was going to make. From Samarkand back to Tashkent, you're going to, again, take the Afrosiab train, which is this high-speed train that the Uzbek government buys from Spain. So it is, again, this very Western. You can see the picture of how, you know, the train seats are. It's very lovely. The train staff come around and serve first-class customers, you know, tea and coffee. It's very well done. From Tashkent to Samarkand, vice versa, it's a, you know, little over 2 hours. And so this is just kind of where, again, I want to stress that we are really truly beholden to the flight and train schedules for logistics in this country, more than like probably anywhere else in the world. And that's, again, just because we really want to minimize the long distance overland drives. And I also want to know, while we're looking at these very beautiful pictures of, you know, local Uzbeks, that while this is definitely a cheaper destination than, say, like Western Europe, trips in this region sometimes are a little higher than people are expecting them to be. And that's mainly due to one fact, which is English is not widely spoken here. And in Uzbekistan, you have one guide for the whole time you're in the country. So that guide is actually traveling with you from city to city. So, you know, that does increase the cost because they're with you 24 hours a day. You know, we do have to pay for their accommodations and meals. So that does mean that it's a little more expensive than sometimes people are imagining. So it's approximately $500 to $700 per person per day for 2 people traveling together and sharing a room. So just to kind of give you an idea. So again, not as expensive as some of our Western, you know, European destinations, but it's not always kind of as dirt cheap as people are expecting. And then I also just want to take kind of a moment to mention like what you can combine Uzbekistan with for someone who has a little more time. So you can combine it with one of the other 4 Central Asian countries very easily. So that's Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Tajikistan. So you could do, you know, all 5. You could add just 1 more or 2 more. So that's an option. As well, you can combine it with Turkey. I'd say about 85% of all of our guests coming to Uzbekistan are doing it via Turkish Airlines with a stopover in Istanbul. And the flight times are long. So, you know, a couple night layover to break up those long international flights in Istanbul is it's really great if clients have the time for it. I think it's a fabulous way to kind of break that up and not feel, you know, so jet lagged when you arrive. And then for experts for the region, there is my lovely colleague, Stella Bailey, and myself. I just like to end with a, you know, quick picture so you can kind of picture who we are. And you're always welcome to email us if you have questions on the region or if you have an inquiry. Our emails are pretty easy. They're just our first names at exeterinternational.com.